The child Pope Francis never forgot, and the letter that changed everything. Welcome to our channel, where every story touches a piece of your heart. As you journey with us today, we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below and share your corner of the world with our growing family. And if today's story moved you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because tomorrow, another powerful story awaits, one you won't want to miss. Thank you for being here. Let's continue this beautiful journey together. In the heart of Vatican City, on a chilly afternoon, the great St. Peter's Square was bustling with pilgrims and tourists alike. Flags from every nation waved in the cool breeze, and voices in dozens of languages blended into a low, humming chorus of devotion. Amidst the crowd, Pope Francis moved slowly, blessing the faithful with a gentle hand and a warm smile. His white robe seemed to glow under the soft light of the winter sun, and wherever he walked, people pressed closer, eager for a moment, a glance, a touch. But then, something caught his eye. Something quiet, almost hidden. Off to the side, near a stone pillar, stood a small boy, no older than 8 or 9. His clothes were worn and too thin for the cold. His shoes were scuffed and a size too large. Unlike the others, the boy wasn't pushing forward. He wasn't waving or shouting for attention. He simply stood there, clutching something in his hand, his eyes wide and solemn, watching. Francis's heart stirred. There was a silence about the boy, a kind of invisible sadness that cut through the noise around them. Without a word, Pope Francis broke from his planned path and made his way toward the boy. The crowd parted slowly, confused, whispering, but no one dared to stop him. When he reached the boy, Francis knelt down, lowering himself to the child's level. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the grand leader of millions, and the little boy whom the world might easily have overlooked. The boy hesitated, then shyly extended his hand. In it was a small, tattered handkerchief. Inside, carefully wrapped, was a single coin, barely enough to buy a loaf of bread. Dang. With it, a crumpled piece of paper with childish handwriting that read, "I don't have much, I just want to help someone poorer than me." Pope Francis felt his throat tighten. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the crowds, not the cameras, not the world watching. Here was pure generosity, pure love, undiluted by pride or expectation. He gently took the boy's hand in both of his and whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "Today you have given more than any king or emperor ever could." A hush fell over the nearby crowd as they witnessed the unexpected sight. The Pope kneeling before a child, honoring not wealth or power, but the rare and beautiful wealth of the human heart. From that day forward, Pope Francis carried the boy's coin with him, tucked away safely not as a relic but as a living reminder. A reminder that true greatness is often wrapped in the humblest of offerings, and that sometimes, in the quietest corners of the world, miracles are waiting to be seen. Pope Francis never forgot the boy with the coin. Long after the crowd had dispersed, and the day's ceremonies had ended, he sat alone in his private quarters, the small, tattered handkerchief resting on the table before him. Carefully, almost reverently, he unwrapped it once again. There it was, the tiny, weathered coin, simple, unremarkable to anyone else. But to Francis, it was priceless. He turned it over in his fingers, feeling the rough edges worn down by time and use. This coin wasn't just currency. It was a symbol. It held within it the purest form of giving, the willingness to part with the little one had, to serve someone even less fortunate. Francis pressed the coin tightly into his palm, as if anchoring himself to its meaning. At that moment he made a silent vow. He would keep this coin with him always, a secret treasure, hidden from the world's eyes, but known deeply to his own heart. Days turned into months, and months into years. The weight of leadership grew heavier on his shoulders. Every day brought new decisions, new controversies, new expectations. In moments of exhaustion or doubt, Francis would slip his hand into the inner pocket of his robes, feeling for the small coin tucked safely inside. Whenever the noise of power, politics, and ambition threatened to cloud his purpose, that coin reminded him leadership was not about grandeur. It was about service. It was about humility. There were days when the temptation to despair was strong. Criticism would pour in from every corner, too progressive for some, too traditional for others. Whispers filled the Vatican halls. Allies turned cold. In those darkest hours, Francis would retreat to the quiet of his chapel. Kneeling before the altar, he would take out the boy's coin, hold it up to the candlelight, and whisper under his breath, This is why I'm here." The tiny coin seemed to gleam brighter in the flickering light, as if echoing the boy's unspoken message across the years. Stay true. Keep giving, even when it costs you everything. It wasn't the grand cathedrals or the priceless art that kept the spirit of the church alive. It was moments like this, small acts, silent sacrifices, unseen by the world, yet more enduring than marble or gold. Pope Francis tucked the coin back into his pocket, stood up, and faced the night beyond the chapel doors. His heart was steadier, his purpose clearer. In a world that measured success in riches and applause, Francis chose to measure it by a single worn coin, and the love it represented. He knew sometimes the smallest treasures carry the greatest weight, and he would carry it. For the rest of his life, years passed, and the little coin remained hidden in the folds of Pope Francis's robes, close to his heart. It had survived through every trial, every late-night prayer, every burden that came with being the spiritual shepherd of millions. To the world, Francis seemed tireless, a leader who stood unwavering through storms of controversy and change. But only he knew. When doubt gnawed at his spirit, when loneliness crept in, it was often that tiny coin that reminded him who he was. Then, one morning, everything shifted. As the sun poured golden light into the quiet halls of Vatican City, an assistant approached Francis carrying a simple envelope. No royal crest, no diplomatic seal, just a worn piece of stationery, addressed in a hand that trembled slightly across the page. To the one who once saw me. Curious, Francis took the letter, feeling a strange weight settle in his chest. He returned to his private quarters, sat in the same chair where, years ago, he had first unwrapped the boy's coin and carefully opened the envelope. Inside, the E words unfolded like a forgotten melody. I don't know if you remember me. I was just a boy that day in St. Peter's Square, the one who gave you a coin wrapped in a handkerchief. I never forgot what you did for me. Francis leaned closer, the memory flooding back. The boy's solemn eyes, the trembling hand, the fragile offering of hope. That day you made me believe I mattered. You made me believe that even the smallest gift could carry weight in this world. The letter went on, telling a story that made Francis's hands tremble slightly as he read. The boy had grown up in poverty, struggling against every odd stacked against him. There were nights he had no home, days he had no food. But whenever despair tried to pull him under, he remembered the Pope's voice whispering, "You are richer than kings." Clinging to that memory, the boy, now a man, fought to build a life of service. He worked odd jobs to pay for school, studied by candlelight, and eventually became a doctor, traveling to the poorest parts of the world to heal the sick, to stand with the forgotten, just as someone had once stood with him. I owe it all to you, the letter concluded. Your kindness became my compass. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. By the time he finished reading, Pope Francis's vision blurred with tears. He pressed the letter against his chest, his heart pounding with something more powerful than pride, something purer, a deep, humbling gratitude. In the silence of his room, Francis understood something he had always believed but now felt in his very bones, that one act of compassion, one moment of true attention, can ripple across years, across lives, across the entire world. He bowed his head and whispered, "A simple prayer. Let me never forget the power of one small coin. And one small boy." The letter rested quietly in Pope Francis's lap, its words still echoing in the silent corners of his heart. For a long moment, he simply sat there, staring at the flickering candlelight dancing along the walls of his private chamber. Outside, the usual sounds of Vatican life continued, the distant murmur of pilgrims, the rhythmic tolling of church bells. But within these walls, time itself seemed to have stilled. Francis rose slowly, the letter still pressed gently against his chest. His legs, tired from years of service, carried him with deliberate, reverent steps through the long, echoing corridor leading to the Sistine Chapel. Tonight he sought no audience, no grand procession. Tonight it was just him, a shepherd seeking the quiet solace of sacred space. As he pushed open the heavy doors, the vast chapel greeted him with solemn beauty. Michelangelo's masterpieces stretched above him, saints and angels frozen in time, bearing witness to the prayers of centuries. But tonight, Pope Francis wasn't looking upward. He was looking inward. He moved toward the altar, his footsteps soft against the ancient stone floor, and knelt. In one hand, he held the boy's old coin. In the other, the letter that now felt like a second heartbeat. His eyes closed, and for the first time in a long while, Francis allowed the weight of everything, the responsibilities, the criticisms, the endless noise of the world, to fall away. There in the sacred silence he prayed, not in grand booming words meant for the ears of others, but in soft broken whispers meant only for God. "Thank you," he said, voice barely a breath. "Thank you for reminding me why I chose this path. Thank you for showing me that even when the world feels heavy, one small act of love can carry light across the darkness." The coin in his hand grew, warm, as if absorbing the depth of his gratitude. He thought of the boy, now a man, somewhere out in the world, healing the sick, lifting the broken, carrying forward the flame of compassion that had once been sparked with nothing more than a glance and a few simple words. Tears slipped down Francis's cheeks, unnoticed, unashamed. They were not tears of sadness nor of regret. They were tears of fulfillment. The quiet, aching joy of knowing that in a world obsessed with grandeur, it is often the smallest, most unassuming moments that change lives. Forever. The Pope rose slowly, the candlelight reflecting in his tear-bright eyes. He tucked the letter back into his robe, right beside the old coin that had traveled with him all these years. And as he turned back toward the world waiting beyond the chapel doors, Francis carried with him a renewed sense of hope, an unbreakable truth stitched into the very fabric of his soul. Sometimes the loudest prayers are the ones whispered in gratitude, and sometimes the greatest victories are the ones fought quietly in the unseen places of the heart. As Pope Francis stepped back into the dim hallways of the Vatican, the night seemed somehow different. The stone walls, ancient and unyielding, now felt alive, as if they, too, had witnessed something sacred unfold. The letter against his chest and the coin in his pocket pulsed with quiet strength, steadying his every step. Francis walked slowly, his mind replaying every moment, the boy's trembling hands, the simple note of hope, the whispered prayer in the Sistine Chapel. He realized now more than ever that the true power of his position wasn't in titles or ceremonies. It was in the invisible threads of kindness that stretched from heart to heart, across time, across distance. Leadership wasn't measured by how loudly one could speak, but by how deeply one could listen. True greatness wasn't forged in grand halls filled with applause, but in the silent spaces where one soul chooses to lift another. And sometimes the most lasting legacies are built not with monuments of stone, but with moments of compassion, tucked inside the memories of those who needed it most. He thought about that boy, now a man out there somewhere in the world, a man who, because of one small encounter, had chosen a path of healing rather than bitterness, service rather than selfishness. Francis smiled to himself, a smile not of pride but of profound humility. He hadn't just touched a life that day. He had unknowingly set into motion a ripple, a wave of goodness that would stretch far beyond anything he could ever see. And that was the miracle of kindness. It did not demand recognition. It did not ask for monuments or medals. It simply moved, quietly, persistently, through the lives it touched, creating echoes that might ring for generations. As he neared his quarters, Francis paused by a tall, narrow window overlooking St. Peter's Square. The city was sleeping now, bathed in soft moonlight. Somewhere out there, another child stood in a crowd. Somewhere, another broken soul waited for a sign that they mattered. And somewhere, another small act of kindness would spark a revolution of hope. Francis closed his eyes, letting the cool night air wash over him. He whispered a silent promise to keep living the truth the boy had taught him, that the smallest gesture, born from the purest heart, holds the power to move mountains. As long as he had breath, he would keep choosing compassion. He would keep honoring the unseen, the unheard, the overlooked. Because in the end, he knew the greatest treasures he could leave behind would not be gold or power or fame, but the simple, eternal light of kindness passed from one soul to the next. And in that sacred truth, Francis found his greatest peace. If today's story touched your heart, we would love to hear from you. What part of Pope Francis's journey resonated most with you? Was it the silent gift of the boy, the hidden treasure of a simple coin, or the timeless ripple of kindness that stretched across years and lives? Take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below, and tell us, have you ever experienced a small act of kindness that changed your path in life? We believe stories like these connect us across all distances, reminding us that even the smallest gestures can carry a light that never fades. Let's create a space where we celebrate compassion, hope, and the power of one simple, selfless act. Also, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how kindness connects hearts from all corners of the world. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and join us again tomorrow for another story that will inspire and uplift your soul. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.